A racist police officer is patrolling an upscale neighborhood when he sees a black man taking a walk. The officer assumes that the man must be doing something wrong and arrests him without cause. Later, the officer finds out that he has arrested a high-ranking general in the United States Army. General Michael Adams was strolling down one of the tree-lined streets with a smooth gait on the pavement. Michael was tall, with an athletic build that reflected his years of service in the Army. Despite his casual appearance, there was an aura of authority around him. Something in his posture and the way he moved indicated his military background. Mail had been in that neighborhood many times before, although not everyone knew it. He had a house just a few blocks away that he had bought years ago as a peaceful retreat from the demands of his career. He came there to think, relax, and escape the pressures of his responsibilities. Today, he decided to take a walk as he usually did, enjoying the afternoon sun and the tranquility of the streets. The sun was setting, casting longer shadows as Mako continued his walk, unaware of the events that would soon break this peaceful routine. For now, he was just another person enjoying the simplicity of a summer afternoon and finding peace in the ordinary moments that life had to offer. Officer James Tez adjusted his rearview mirror as he drove slowly down the street, his eyes scanning the neighborhood like a hawk searching for trouble. His patrol car rolled at a slow pace, the engine purring softly. It was a routine he had performed countless times before, ensuring that the streets of this upscale suburb remained safe and orderly. Dedes was proud of his work, believing himself to be the line of defense against anything that might disrupt the community's peace. The neighborhood was quiet, almost too quiet. Dedes' hand rested on the steering wheel, his fingers tapping distractedly to the rhythm of a melody that was barely audible over the car's hum. He watched familiar places go by, children's bicycles leaning against fences, gardeners trimming hedges, and the occasional runner or dog walker. Everything seemed normal. Then he saw him, a black man walking alone down the street casually. Dedes narrowed his eyes as he observed the man's appearance. He was tall, muscular, dressed in a white t-shirt and jeans. His pace was relaxed, and he didn't seem to be in a hurry. There was nothing particularly alarming about him, but something in the sight triggered the alarms in Dedes' mind. He didn't recognize him, and that alone was enough to make him suspicious. Maybe the guy was lost, or maybe he was scouting houses. Either way, Dedes wasn't going to just let him pass without finding out more. He slowed the car even further, keeping pace with the man's walk. As he passed by, he saw the man glance at him briefly. His expression was calm and indifferent. Dedes' jaw tightened. That calmness bothered him, as if the man wasn't at all concerned about his presence, as if he belonged there. That unsettled Dedes. He made a quick decision, parking his patrol car at the curb and getting out. He adjusted his belt and the radio on his shoulder. As he approached the man continued walking, oblivious to the officer's approach. Dedes felt a flash of annoyance and raised his voice as he addressed the man.
"Hey you."
The man stopped and turned to face Dedes. He looked at him directly, his eyes firm and impassive. "Yes, officer." "Is there a problem?" asked Dedes. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a moment to closely assess the man. The man's face was calm, his posture relaxed, as if he didn't see Dedes as a threat. That only heightened Dedes' suspicion. "What are you doing here?" demanded Dedes, his tone harsh. "I'm just taking a walk," responded the man calmly. "Isn't that allowed?" asked Dedes. Dedes frowned. He didn't like the man's tone, so calm and impassive. It made him feel like he had no control over the situation, and Dedes liked being in control. He took another step closer, standing upright. "I need to see your identification," said Dedes, his voice laden with authority. The man raised an eyebrow but didn't move. "Why am I being accused of something?" asked patiently. Dedes' patience was running out. "This is a private neighborhood. We don't usually see people like you around here. I have the right to question anyone who seems out of place," said Dedes. The man sighed softly, and Dedes' annoyance grew. "I live nearby," said the man. "Just a few blocks away. I'm not doing anything wrong, officer. I'm just enjoying a walk." "Show me your ID," repeated Dedes, his hand instinctively moving toward his belt where his radio and other authority tools hung. He wasn't in the mood for resistance. The man slowly and deliberately reached into his pocket, pulling out his wallet. He held it up, showing his identification. Dides took it, glancing at the name and address. His eyes widened momentarily in surprise. The address was indeed local, but something still didn't add up. Maybe it was the man's calmness, or perhaps just Dides' sense of duty awakening. "I've never seen you around here before," said Dides, his tone still firm. "How long have you lived here?" "Several years," responded the man normally. "I don't go out much. I'm working. I don't see why this is necessary." Dides felt the heat rise to his face. He didn't like being questioned, especially not by someone who seemed to think he was above suspicion. His grip tightened on the man's ID. "I need to do my job," said Dides. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area. I need to make sure everything is in order." The man remained silent, his eyes still fixed on Dides. There was no fear in his expression or sign of surrender. Dides didn't like him being in control of the situation. Not a stranger who thought he could walk wherever he wanted had to assert his authority. "Stay here," ordered Dides. "Don't move." He turned towards his patrol car to verify the identification. His heart beat a little faster now, a mix of irritation and something else, something he didn't want to admit. While in the patrol car, Dides took another look at the man standing calmly on the sidewalk, waiting quietly. The unease in Dides' chest grew. Something wasn't right in this situation, but he dismissed that thought. He was a law officer, and his job was to keep the neighborhood safe. He couldn't afford to doubt himself. Now, Dides sat in the patrol car, watching the man through the rearview mirror as he began typing the man's details into the system. The feeling of discomfort persisted, hanging in the air like a storm cloud about to break. He remained on the sidewalk, watching as Officer Dides returned to his patrol car, feeling the weight of the officer's scrutiny even from a distance. The street was still, the only sound the faint singing of birds and the hum of the patrol car. Mako kept his breathing steady, maintaining his calm demeanor. He had nothing to hide, knew he hadn't done anything wrong, but the way Dides looked at him, the questions, and the demand for his ID made his muscles tense. Mail had seen that look many times during his service, a mix of suspicion and authority, often directed at those considered different or out of place. It was a look that could escalate into something much worse if not handled carefully. He looked around. Some people were watching from a distance, now spying through windows or stopping in their gardens, curious about what was happening. A middle-aged man with a garden hose was openly watching water spilling onto the sidewalk. A woman walking her dog had pulled out her phone, as if she were ready to record. Mail glanced at her briefly, and she looked away. He took a deep breath. This wasn't a situation he wanted, a confrontation. Dides got back into the patrol car, the ID still in his hand, with an expression of irritation on his face. He approached Mako, stopping a foot away, standing upright, trying to assert his dominance. "Your record is clean," said Dides, almost as if he were disappointed. "But that doesn't explain why you're here. I already told you," responded Mako calmly. "I live here. I'm taking a walk. That's all." Dides' eyes narrowed. "I told you we've had reports of suspicious activity. It's my job to check things." Mako maintained his gaze. "I understand that, officer, but I'm not causing any trouble. I'm just walking." Dides' frustration was evident. Now his face reddened slightly, a grimace frowning his brow. He looked around, noticing the small audience we had attracted. He didn't like being challenged, especially not in front of others. Ma noticed the change, the subtle edge in the officer's posture. "Look," said Dides, his voice lowering. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Tell me exactly what you're doing here, or I'll take you for a more detailed interrogation. It's your choice." Mail felt a flash of anger, but kept it under control. He knew this tactic was intimidation, pressuring until the other person gave in. "I've told you everything you need to know," said Mako firmly. "You're making a mistake." Dides' jaw tightened. "The only mistake I see is that someone thinks they can walk around this neighborhood without being questioned. Now you're going to cooperate, or I need to escalate this." Mao's patience was running out. He had tried to reason, explain, but Dides wasn't listening. It wasn't about security, it was about control, asserting authority over someone who lived as a threat based solely on appearance. Mako looked at the people watching, then back at Didi's officer. "I'm not resisting," said Mako, keeping his voice firm, "but I also know my rights. You have no grounds to arrest me. I haven't done anything wrong." Didi's eyes flashed with anger. "I will decide what is right and what is wrong," he snapped without warning. "You're coming with me." Male tensed as the grip tightened. His training kicked in. He could easily subdue the officer, but he knew that would only escalate the situation. He let Didi's push him into the patrol car, feeling the hardness of the handcuffs as they were placed on his wrists. "Is this really necessary?" asked Mako, his voice calm but firm. Davis ignored him, pushing Michael towards the back seat of the patrol car. Michael sat down, looking at the passers-by, his expressions mixed between confusion and concern. The woman with the dog had raised her phone, recording the entire scene. Male hoped that would be enough to prevent things from getting worse. As Didi slammed the door shut, Mako felt a wave of frustration. He had gone out for a peaceful walk, something to clear his mind, and now he was sitting in the back seat of a patrol car, treated like a criminal just because of the color of his skin and the assumptions that came with it. The drive to the police station was silent, but the tension was palpable. Male sat in the back of the patrol car, his wrists still bound by the cold metal of the handcuffs, staring straight ahead, ignoring the occasional looks Didi's threw at him through the rear-view mirror. The scenery blurred, the tree-lined streets of the neighborhood giving way to busy roads leading to the city. Mako's mind raced, not with fear but with disbelief at how quickly a simple walk had turned into this. Didi's entered the station's parking lot, parking the car in a lot full of police vehicles. He got out, opening the back door and grabbing Mako by the arm. The station was full of activity, officers coming and going, talking on radios, carrying files. Davis led Male inside, down a hallway to the detention area. Mako felt the stares of other officers on him, heard the murmurs. It wasn't the first time he was the center of attention, but it was the first time he experienced it from the wrong side of the law he had sworn to protect. Male had spent his life maintaining order, defending his country, and now he was being escorted through a police station like an ordinary criminal. Didi's opened a door to a small room, guiding Male inside. It was a typical detention room. Bare walls, a table, and 2 chairs. Didi's gestured for Mako to sit while he stood by the door, arms crossed, a self-satisfied expression on his face. "You'll stay here until we clarify this," said Didi's, his tone curt. Merrill looked at him calmly. "What are we clarifying, officer? You have my ID. Do you know where I live? What else do you need?" Didi's eyes hardened. "I need to know why you were in that neighborhood. Why did you think you could walk around there as if you owned it?" Male sighed, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "I wasn't doing anything wrong. I live in that neighborhood. I haven't done anything to justify this treatment." Didi's reddened. "People like you don't just walk around neighborhoods like this for no reason. You could be scouting houses, looking for an opportunity." Mako's eyes narrowed. "What exactly do you mean by that, officer?" repeated Didi's jaw. He tensed but didn't respond. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. The tension was palpable. Mako could feel Didi's anger, his need to assert control, to make a point. He knew it wasn't personal. It was about what he represented to Didi's, a disruption of the order he was desperate to maintain. The door opened, and Sergeant Laura Smet entered. She was a tall woman with short brown hair, her expression reflecting professionalism and concern. She looked at Didi's and then at Mako, her eyes assessing the situation. Michael recognized her, calm, composed, a voice of reason amidst the chaos. "What's going on here?" asked Smet, her voice firm. "I found General Adams walking through the upscale neighborhood, acting suspiciously. He refused to explain why he was there, so I brought him here," said Didi's, standing upright. Smet looked at Mako, her gaze sharp but fair. "Is that true, Michael?" He nodded slightly. He was taking a walk. Officer Didi's, interrogated him, and he provided his identification, he explained. "I live nearby, but that wasn't enough for him." "Did you check his ID?" asked Smet. "Yes," responded Didi's quickly. "Is it clean?" asked Smet. Yes, responded Dedes. But what? Interrupted Smet firmly. He was acting suspicious, insisted Dedes. I was doing my job, keeping the neighborhood safe. Smith crossed his arms, sighing. This man is a high-ranking general in the United States Army, said in a low but clear voice. You brought him here without cause, with handcuffs as well. Do you understand the implications of this? Davis blinked, clearly surprised. He looked at Michael and then at Smet. I didn't know, he stammered. Smet frowned. It shouldn't matter who he is. Your job is to protect and serve, not judge based on appearances. This is unacceptable. Davis released him immediately. Dedes stumbled with the keys, approaching to remove the handcuffs. Mail felt the relief of being freed and lightly rubbed his wrists, feeling the pain from the tight metal. He stood up, towering over Dedes but maintaining a calm demeanor. Sergeant Smet, said Mako firmly, thank you for your professionalism. But this isn't just about me. It's about how officers like Officer Dedes perform their duties. Smith nodded. I agree. We will discuss this further, General Adams. Rest assured, this incident will be handled appropriately. Mako looked at Dedes, who still seemed stunned. I hope this serves as a, said Michelle quietly. Judging someone by their appearance can lead to errors, dangerous mistakes. Smet gestured towards the door. Let's take this to my office, said. We need to address what happened today. As they left the detention room, Mako walked alongside Smith, feeling the stares of the other officers on him. He knew this wasn't over, but it was a start. Conversations were needed, changes were needed, and if this was the catalyst, so be it. Back in Smet's office, Mako sat across from her as she began drafting a report. Dedes remained outside with a look of confusion and shame. Ma watched him through the glass window, thinking about the long road ahead. It wasn't just about the actions of one officer, but the culture that allowed those actions to occur in the first place. Michael had spent his life fighting battles. This was another, and he intended to keep moving forward. The fight for respect and equality didn't end on the battlefield. It extended to every street, every neighborhood, in every interaction. Smet put down the pen and looked at Mail. I'm sorry for what happened, she said. We will ensure this doesn't go unnoticed. Michael nodded. It's not about apologies, Sergeant. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Smith stood up with a firm posture. Officer Dedes is suspended with immediate effect. An investigation into your conduct will be conducted, and depending on the outcome, further actions will be taken, said Davis. Davis nodded, looking defeated. He turned and left the office without saying another word. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Smith watched him leave, and then looked back at Mako. We can do better, said. I will make sure of it. Michael nodded. I believe in you, Sergeant. But remember, this isn't just about Dedes. It's about changing the culture that allows this kind of behavior to occur. It starts with leadership, it starts with officers like you. Smith sat down again, thoughtful. Thank you for your patience today, General. I know it hasn't been easy, but your words will make a difference. Mail took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the day beginning to lighten slightly. We all have a role to play. Sergeant, let's make sure we perform it well. She stood up, extending her hand. Smet shook it firmly, a silent agreement between them. When Mail left the office, he felt a sense of purpose. This incident, though unsettling, was an opportunity to provoke change. It wasn't just about him, but ensuring that no one else had to go through what he did. Mako stepped outside, feeling a resolution. There was a long road ahead, but at least now he wasn't walking it alone. The news of what had happened with General Michael Adams quickly spread throughout the police station and into the community at large. The next day, whispers had turned into open conversations. Officers gathered in break rooms, talking quietly, some looking at Officer Dedes' empty desk. The air in the station was thick with tension, aware that something significant had occurred. Dedes' suspension wasn't just a disciplinary action, it was a sign that things were changing. Sergeant Laura Smet stood in front of the officers gathered in the morning meeting, her expression serious and her tone firm. As many of you know, Officer Dedes has been suspended while an internal investigation is conducted. The incident with General Michael Adams was a violation of our standards. We are here to protect and serve all members of our community, and that includes treating everyone with respect and fairness. A murmur spread through the room. Some officers nodded in agreement. Others seemed uncomfortable, shifting in their seats. Smith noticed the varied reactions but continued. Our actions reflect the entire department. Incidents like this erode public trust. We cannot allow that. We have the responsibility to do our best to maintain the highest standards of conduct. One of the officers, a young man named Ramirez, raised his hand. Sergeant, what will happen with Ramirez? Smith looked at him. That will be determined during the investigation. For now, he is suspended. But I want to make it clear that this isn't just about DDs. It's about ensuring that we all understand the importance of our role in this community. Racial profiling has no place in this department. The room fell silent again. The weight of Smet's words settled over the officers. She continued, "We will be conducting additional training sessions on racial sensitivity and de-escalation tactics. I expect full participation. We need to learn from this and ensure it doesn't happen again." At the end of the meeting, the officers began to leave the room, some deep in thought, others whispering among themselves. Smith watched them leave, hoping his words had made an impact. He knew change wouldn't happen overnight, but it had to start somewhere. Meanwhile, General Michael Adams had returned to his usual routines, but his thoughts often wandered back to the incident. It wasn't just about what happened to him, but the broader implications. Michael had received a call from Smet informing him about the investigation and the steps being taken to address the problem. He appreciated her efforts, but knew this was just the beginning. That afternoon, Mako received an invitation to meet with community leaders and representatives from the police department who wanted to discuss what had happened and how to move forward. Michael accepted, understanding the importance of these conversations. The meeting was held at a local community center, in a large room with chairs arranged in a circle. Mail arrived to find a mix of faces: police officers, community leaders, local activists, and some residents. Sergeant Smet was there along with Officer Ramirez and other department members. Michael recognized some of the community leaders, people he had worked with on various initiatives over the years. As the meeting began, the air was thick with anticipation. A community leader named Mrs. Turner, an older woman with a kind but firm demeanor, stood up to address the group. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "We are here today because an incident has brought to light issues we can no longer ignore. General Adams, we appreciate your willingness to share your experience and be part of this conversation." Michael nodded, feeling the gazes of everyone in the room. He took a deep breath before speaking. "What happened to me was wrong," he said clearly. "But this isn't just about me. It's about how we ensure that everyone in our community feels safe, respected, and treated with accountability." An officer named, who was sitting next to Smet, spoke. "We want to do better things. We are committed to making changes, but it will take time. What should we focus on?" he asked. Michel appreciated the open question. "Let's start with training," he responded. "Not just racial training, but on how to interact with the community. Officers need to understand that their role is to protect, not intimidate, and there must be clear consequences for those who cross the line." Mrs. Turner nodded in agreement. Trust is key at this moment. There is a lot of distrust, especially among minority communities. We need to see that the police are on our side, not against us. Sergeant Smet spoke next. "We are implementing new training protocols immediately and reviewing our policies on stops and searches. It's not just about punishment, but about education and prevention. We want to build a partnership with the community, not create division." A local activist named Jordan, who had been listening quietly, raised his hand. "It's good to hear there is a commitment to change," he said, "but we need transparency. We need to know that when problems arise, they are addressed openly, not swept under the rug." Michael agreed. Transparency and accountability are critical. This can't just be words. It has to be actions. People need to see that changes are being made, that their voices are being heard. The conversation continued, touching on various topics: community engagement programs, regular meetings between the police and residents, and the importance of officers being seen as allies rather than as law enforcers. Ideas were shared, Agreements were made, and a sense of cautious optimism began to take root. At the end of the meeting, Sergeant Smet addressed Mako. "Thank you for being here," she said. "Your input is invaluable. We have a long way to go, but I believe we can make a real difference." Mako shook her hand. "Change isn't easy, but it's necessary. I'm willing to work with all of you, to ensure this community is a place where everyone feels safe." Smet nodded with determination in her eyes. "We'll do it together." When Mako left the community center, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The conversations had been honest and constructive, though there was still much work to be done. The seeds of change had been planted. Mail knew that real change would take time, patience, and a lot of effort, but he was ready to see it through his community and for everyone who believed in justice and equality. The road ahead was long, but for the first time in a long time, Mako felt they were heading in the right direction. A few weeks after the community forum, a new sense of awareness had settled over the neighborhood and the police department. Conversations about respect, prejudice, and justice continued to resonate in the police hallways and in the living rooms of homes. There was a shared understanding that, although progress had been made, the work was far from over. Michael Adams resumed his daily walks just as he had before the incident. Only this time, things felt different. The looks that once held suspicion were now replaced by nods of recognition and friendly greetings. Neighbors who once kept their distance now approached with smiles, eager to exchange a few words. Michael appreciated these small gestures. They were signs that his message had been heard, that change, though gradual, was taking root. One crisp morning, Mako was walking down the familiar tree-lined streets with the crunch of autumn leaves under his feet. He passed a group of children playing in their front yard, their laughter filling the air. A woman walking her dog gave him a nod and a warm smile as she passed. "Good morning, General," called Michael. "Good morning," responded Mako, nodding in gratitude as he continued his walk. Mako noticed a patrol car approaching slowly from the opposite direction. For a moment, his muscles tensed, a reflex from the memory of his last encounter. But as the car got closer, he recognized Officer Ramirez behind the wheel. Ramirez lowered the window and smiled. "Good morning, General," said Ramirez in a friendly tone. "How are you?" "Today," responded Mail, returning the smile and feeling a sense of calm. "I'm good, Officer Ramirez. Just enjoying the weather." Ramirez nodded. "I'm glad to hear that. If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here for the community, after all." Mako appreciated the gesture. "Thank you, officer. It's good to see things moving in the right direction." As Ramirez drove away, Mako felt a wave of gratitude. It wasn't just about the changes in policies or the new training programs. It was about the shift in mindset, the willingness of individuals to engage and learn. Mako continued his walk, passing more neighbors who greeted him with friendly gestures and nods. The neighborhood that once felt like a place of judgment was beginning to feel like home. Later that day, Ma had a scheduled meeting with Sergeant Laura Smet at the police station. She had invited him to discuss ongoing reforms and hear his opinions on the progress. When Mail entered the station, he noticed a different atmosphere. There was a sense of purpose, of professionalism. Officers moved with intention, some stopping to greet Michael as he passed. In Smet's office, the sergeant stood up to greet Mako, offering a firm handshake. "General Adams, thank you for coming." "Please take a seat," she said. Michael sat down, appreciating Smet's direct approach, a quality Michelle respected. He wanted to give her an update on the investigation. Officer Prejudices has been formally dismissed from the department. The investigation confirmed that his actions violated departmental policies. His dismissal was not just a punishment, but a way to set a standard for what we expect from our officers. Michael nodded. "I believe it was the right decision. Prejudices' behavior was unacceptable, and his actions undermined the trust between the police and the community." Smet sighed, looking reflective. "It's not easy to fire someone, but we need officers who are committed to equity and justice. We have implemented new training protocols and are focusing on community engagement. Officers are now required to attend monthly workshops on de-escalation and cultural awareness. We are also organizing regular community meetings to maintain lines of communication. Mail was pleased to hear this. These are important steps, Sergeant. I've already noticed a difference. The way officers are interacting with the community has changed. People feel heard. Smith smiled. We've received positive feedback. The community feels more connected, more willing to interact with us. It's encouraging to see how small change in attitude can make a big difference. Michael leaned forward, his voice serious. We must not stop here. We need to maintain this momentum. It's not just about policies and training, it's about culture. We need to create a culture of respect where every officer understands that their duty is to protect and serve everyone without prejudice. Smith nodded. We agree. We've made progress, but there's still a lot to do. I'm committed to moving forward, and I know others are too. Ma stood up, extending her hand once more. Thank you, Sergeant, for your leadership and for taking this seriously. Change isn't easy, but together we can make a difference. Smith shook his hand firmly. Thank you, General Adams. Your courage in speaking out has been a catalyst for these changes. We won't forget it. When Mako left the station, he felt a sense of closure. The incident that had started with suspicion and hostility had led to meaningful dialogue and real changes. It was a reminder that even difficult situations could be opportunities for growth. Michael was proud of the steps that had been taken but knew that vigilance was key. The fight for justice and equality required constant effort and commitment. If this video has helped you connect more with yourself and inspired you on your growth journey, take action and subscribe to the Vidasto Inspiration channel to discover more stories that will fill you with motivation and hope. I would love to hear your opinion, so leave a comment telling me how this story has impacted your life or what reflections it has left you. And if you think this message can inspire someone you know, share it with your friends so they too can find inspiration and purpose in their lives.